I watch porn. I'm not a pervert who has a catalog of every actress. I don't even have a favorite. I don't have any subscriptions and I don't watch every day. I have a few videos on my computer, but who doesn't? I'm in a long distance relationship with my fiance, 3 hours apart, and we only get to see each other on the weekends. Most of the time, we only get to see each other every other weekend. I'm a guy, and I have testosterone that needs to be released. So last night, I did the dirty. Just browsed some videos on my phone for a quick fix. I had woken up at 2 in the morning, and I couldn't get back to sleep, so I figured it would leave me just tired enough to drift off. And this was successful. I didn't download this time, just like I usually don't while I'm on my phone, so I don't know how the video ended up on my phone. And I definitely don't know where it came from. I've been having some car trouble lately and recorded a video today to upload to YouTube so I could post it on a forum and get opinions. I opened up YouTube on my phone, and when I went to the gallery to select my video, it was there. She was looking at me, taunting me. There was something strange about the thumbnail, and I should have just said fuck this and deleted the file right then and there. It was a picture of some brunette punk rock chick staring at the camera. Her eyes were large and glazed over, and she had such a plastic smile on her face. It's one of the most unnerving things that I've ever seen, and being on the internet most of the time, I've seen it all. This was worse than any beheading, any freak accident, any gore picture that you could find on the depths of the deep web. It chilled me to the bone. And it was all because of that look. I should not have opened the link, but I did. And as soon as I tapped on the video, my phone froze. I couldn't go back to my home screen. I couldn't hit the back button. The power button didn't work. I tried to hold the power button in until the phone reset, but it wouldn't restart. Just as I got the case off and was ready to take the back off of the phone, the video started playing. This wasn't a professional film. This was completely amateur. The girl was sitting on her bed naked. The only thing in frame was her on her bed and a closed door. Same plastic smile and glazed over. For about 10 seconds, nothing changed. She just stared back at me. Just as I was about to try the home button again, her bedroom door opened. A man walked in wearing a black sack over his head with 2 eye holes cut out. He sat down next to her on the bed, both facing the camera. That's when shit started getting weird. She knelt down and started to suck him off. It was different than your usual porn. Every video I've seen has been filled with moans and sounds of pleasure from both parties. The only noise in the video was her sucking. The man sat unfazed. About a minute into the video, the girl stopped, and her head turned 180, so she was staring at the camera, with that same soulless look. All of a sudden, the video cut to her and the man on the bed. She was laying down and he was fucking her. She just stared into the camera with that same face, neither of them making a sound. This went on for 30 seconds before they both got up from their positions. She moved in front of the camera and he grabbed it from its position it had been in the entirety of the video. The camera focused on her face for about 10 seconds, still haunting me with the same smile. In one swift movement, the man hit the girl in the face with the camera, cracking the lens and busting a few of her teeth out. I'm pretty sure her nose is broken as well, because there was a significant amount of blood pouring from it. Through this, she kept the same smile. Her bloody face and missing teeth didn't seem to faze her. Then she spoke for the first time, not breaking the smile. 5 words that gave me chills as I write this. "This is for you, Sean." She knew my name. As she started laughing hysterically, blood ran down her face and the video cut out. My phone crashed. I couldn't turn it back on. I posted this, because I need to get this out in the open. I don't know who to tell. I'm going to visit a friend of mine tomorrow who's really good with technology and see if he can get my phone to turn on. I'll try to find out some information about the file. This whole experience has been really freaky, and I can't tell if I'm in any serious danger or not. I was just a kid. I was once immersed in the concepts of controlling time, manipulating fire, or just using the idea that my blanket was a shield from the things that would go bump in the night. Like any 6-year-old, back in my days at least, my mind overflowing with sparkling ideas and adventures led me to create my own imaginary friend. I met him outside our yard one stormy night. I was perfectly tucked in my bed, complete with my green-colored nightlight and goodnight kisses from my mom for protective charms. But then it struck me that I haven't drank my milk yet to help me sleep. It became a routine, so even if it wasn't really necessary, it just felt more annoying the longer I ignored it. So I climbed out of my bed and went to my mother's room to ask her to make me one. She let me sit down on the couch but wouldn't allow me to turn on the TV. I just stared as the rain trickled down the windows, making each droplet race each other to pass the time. It was at that moment when I heard an unfamiliar shaky high voice coming from outside, crying for help. My eyes shifted and I saw a poor boy about my age shivering from the cold outside. "Let me in. I'm cold." I heard him as if there was no window between us, as if he was right inside my head. I rushed to the door and opened it. I could hear my mom calling out my name and running towards me asking what's going on. But all I cared about was getting that poor boy out from the rain. "Mom, he's so cold. He needs our help," I told her as she was closing the door. "Who's he?" she replied. I wasn't sure how, because I never saw how. He got inside the front door so quickly, like magic. He was right beside me. He looked at me and said to tell my mom that he was my friend. So I did. He was just about my height. He had perfectly combed and shiny hair to match his slick suit and tie. He wasn't big or fat. He was a bit skinny and looked like he would be one of the potential victims from the bullies at school. He was pale, weak, and would always trip over because of those unreasonable big leather shoes. But the most special thing about him was that he had blue shiny buttons for eyes. And for that is why I gave him the name Mr. Button Eyes. In return, he told me that he gets to name me as well. He told me from that day on, he'd call me Vic. We would spend countless hours running around the house, and boy, it sure cracked me up like a crazed jackal seeing him trip behind me. We would play hide and seek, tag, astronauts, and even pirates. I promised to play with him forever and ever, till there were no games left to play. After a long day of playing, he would stand right beside my bed and watch me as my mom tucked me in. I would sometimes request Mom to give him a goodnight kiss as well, but she would just laugh and tell me to go to sleep. One night, he started asking me why I keep my teddy bear so close by. I told him that Fruddard, my bear, protects me from the monsters under my bed. "But I can do that as well. You don't need Fruddard, just me, Victor." His soft, reassuring voice was like a careless caress to my ears. "If Fruddard has been protecting me for, I can protect you too." His innocent voice somehow became low and raspy. The atmosphere inside the room changed. It became heavier and colder. The next day I woke up, I saw Fruddard on the floor, his head ripped away from his body. My lips curled and everything in front of me started to get blurry. I was about to bawl when Mr. Button Eyes came out of nowhere and hugged me. I wasn't sure when he started becoming a bit more aggressive. There are times that he would just stare from the far side of the room doing nothing. I would ask him if he would want to sleep, but he would always keep silent. My parents would always get called inside the principal's office, since some of my friends went home with scissor cuts on their hands. They would scold me for doing it, even if I tried to reason them that it wasn't me. Mr. Button Eyes didn't want me to play with other people. He would sometimes force me to look at the things he did. "You promised me you would play with me forever and ever and ever." The only thing he would say to me every time he would hurt my friends. Each day would pass, and I would try to ignore Mr. Button Eyes as hard as I could. And every night after Mom would tuck me in bed, he would keep saying that I promised to play with him forever. He started to change. He stopped talking and simply just followed me around. I still couldn't make friends. Each time I tried, he got more violent in his attacks, from tearing up bags to cutting off ponytails. The one that really raised the bars was the one day after class. Mandy was a girl I was crushing on. She had beautiful golden hair, and her parents would often let her wear bright tinted dresses, so she would always stand out. What melts me every time is her angelic smile. She offered me her sandwich since she told me she was already full. Even if the sandwich was only 2 bites away and mostly just the crust, I gladly took it from her hands. "Did you see that?" she asked me while pointing behind the bushes. She ran and got behind the bush. Minutes passed and there were still no signs of her, so I grabbed her lunchbox and went to see what happened. I dropped her lunchbox after witnessing Mr. Button Eyes holding a sock pressed against her mouth while pinning her to the ground. The tears were running down her chubby cheeks. "Mr. Button Eyes, please stop," was all I was able to scream out. I was ready to cry since the look on Mr. Button Eyes' face looked more violent, more willing. I tried to shove him off of her, but he was too strong. I couldn't get him off. I started crying like crazy. I could feel Mandy's hands shaking as she grabbed hold of my foot. I tried to run away to call for help, but she was begging me to push him right off. The moment Mr. Button Eyes removed the sock, he grabbed Mandy's lower jaw, with his finger pinning her tongue down. I reached for a rock in hopes of using it as a weapon and to throw it at Mr. Button Eyes. Mandy was screaming more than ever, and I was crying at the top of my lungs as well. It was about the time that the teachers came rushing towards the bush we were at, but all they saw was me with a rock at hand and Mandy with 3 of her front teeth yanked out, spitting red blood all over the grass. After that, I've been avoided by many of the kids in my neighborhood, as ordered by their parents. Some people mock me and tease me from far away like I'm some sort of zoo animal. I was the gossip of both children and adults. That's when my mom and dad decided to move away from Louisiana and go and start anew in San Francisco. On the day we started packing, I've decided that I needed to end our friendship. I went to my room. As I entered, I felt the same dark and heavy atmosphere I felt before, even with the sun shining brightly outside, with little to no clouds to cover it. My room still looked dark and gloomy. The blue rags appeared to be duller in color, as well as my toys and furniture. Everything was a shade of gray. I entered that room, looking as if it wasn't part of the house, and at the window pane was Mr. Button Eyes, staring outside. With red clenched fists, it seemed like he had no intention to look at me. I called out his name a few times, but he didn't move an inch. "You can't leave me. You promised to play with me forever and ever and ever." I gulped. My legs were shaking and I was completely on edge. His voice started to become raspy and low once more. "Wanna play a game?" Even if I asked with a soft, shaky tone, He understood and it captured his attention. He turned around and asked what game. I led him inside my closet. He smiled. He looked like me the first time my dad gave me fluttered. It was a calm smile, a hoping one, a smile that I could not forget. How long will I need to wait here? I paused, looking back at the things we've done. It was hard, but I did not give a reply. Instead, I shut the door slowly and never spoke to him again. I finished packing my toys and went outside where the moving van was waiting. Years passed. I've gotten my degree, got married, and settled with my 6-year-old daughter Valerie and my wife Sophia. My wife was 7 months pregnant that time when I got a call from my younger brother, Noah. And Noah's a funny guy. He sometimes comes off being just a plain asshole, but being his brother, I think it's safe to say that he's a good person. Better than most people I know. Just a bit too loud at times. Yo, Vic, he greeted me. I was just wondering about that note Dad left us before he passed away. Yeah, what about it? He told us that he left something for both of us, buried inside the basement in our old house in Louisiana. My father passed away 2 years after my marriage. He had always been the mysterious man in the family, always silent in family dinners, made him look unapproachable. But he isn't. He's just not too talkative. So, are you suggesting we dig it up? I replied. Well, yeah, I wasn't actually born around at that time. I was thinking you could drive us there and check it out. Quite the adventure you want us to go here, and let's just pretend that GPS, Google Maps, isn't a thing. Let's, he chuckled. One thing about my arrogant, happy-go-lucky brother is that he likes to hide his emotions. He tried, but I could tell that he only dug the subject up because he misses me. That threw me into some sort of nostalgic roller coaster. So even if I knew it was plain, so shallow of a reason, I said yes without further hesitation. I promised to meet up with him after work around 7 p.m. It seemed like it was so easy when we were talking about it on the phone, as if we're just going to go inside the front door, go down the basement and dig it up, and leave. The rain started slowly tapping at the windshield. Sooner or later, it was drumming off of it like a marching band. We arrived in front of our house. It was all fenced up and abandoned like most of the neighboring houses. It was still pouring outside the car, and we had no umbrellas or raincoats packed up. Now what? I asked. Now we climb the fence and run to the front porch. Are you crazy? It's pouring out there, and if the large keep out sign wasn't enough to give you the impression we're not supposed to be here, that's why we're running, duh. And it would just be like old times, you know, running outside while raining. We hopped out of the car and rushed through the fences. I ran on top of puddles of muddy water that was once a lush field of carefully tamed grass. We arrived at the front door, drenched in rain, and mud splashed all over our shoes and jeans. The porch creaked at every step we took. Spots of gravy brown was already revealing itself behind falling pieces of peach paint. I picked the lock, but it won't budge. Noah insistently tried to push the door while vigorously turning the knob both ways. I'm going to knock it down. Don't. I told him while grabbing him from backing up any further. It's just a little dislocated. I grabbed the knob, pushed the wooden door a bit upwards before slamming my shoulder to open. Always the less exciting one, he sneered. I didn't think he was getting the whole idea that we don't own the place anymore, and that we were sneaking in and should create less attention. We were just lucky all his loud grunting was easily overwhelmed by the rain. I was greeted with a sad picture of a place once overflowing with a happy, loving family. All I saw was a dull, dark living room with dusty couches and shelves accompanied with the smell of wet and old wood. It was dark, but the windows that once were letting in brilliant orange and yellow sunlight were giving a sad dim blue. All the sadness that dropped upon me was quickly swept away, but with unease. I started remembering the reason we left the house in the first place. I started remembering him. It wasn't that hard for a tap on a shoulder to quickly make me jump off my feet. I saw concern from my brother as I tried to relax as much as possible. There were so many questions that entered my head, questions long buried in memories. Was I even imagining those things? Was he even imaginary? Is it like in the horror movies where I was the one actually doing those crimes? My brother went on and searched on the door leading to the basement, while my eyes were stuck to the stairs leading to my old room. I followed him around, even if I knew exactly where the basement is. I walked towards him, heading to the kitchen. My feet were being dragged two ways, back to the car and towards my brother, who was so eager to find that treasure. "Ah, won't budge again. Time to kick it down." "No," I shouted. "Someone might hear you, you fucking dumbass." My eyes shifted at the stairs. "Come on, you make it sound like you've never kicked down a door before. You act like you've never kicked down a door before. You should be a little more creative on how you do things, you know?" "I stopped being creative," I mumbled. He kicked several times before he managed to bust it open. The rusty lock that was holding it from the inside broke and scattered among the concrete steps. It was much darker down there, so I picked up my phone and activated its flashlight to give us vision. It was Rat Haven. The basement was full of dusty old furniture and plastic bags full of old clothes we never had the chance to give to charity. I flashed the light across the room, trying to search for a clue on what we're supposed to be finding in the first place. The note didn't necessarily tell us that there's going to be a giant X at the middle of the place we would have to dig up, but we packed some shovels just in case. We forgot the shovels. No need for that," I interrupted. I flashed the light at the shelf that was in front that had 3 large boxes all labeled to Vic and Noah. My brother sighed of disappointment. I guess he was expecting more thrill in our search. But I was relieved. We didn't need to stick around the house much longer. Unlike my brother, who seemed like he was getting such a high from breaking in and sneaking around, I was having chills the whole time we were there. The whole time, it felt like someone knew we were inside. I chose to ignore that feeling. Noah opened the cases, breaking the locks with a straight iron pipe lying around, as if it wasn't inconvenient enough for us to bust in and find the boxes in less than 30 minutes. I went close beside my brother to get a peek of what it is. It was small glasses sealed with corks and red ribbons. I was so confused on what it was. Beside the 3 heavy boxes was a small note that says, "For loud and sleepless nights with your wives. Interpret that as any way you would want. Ed." "What are these aphrodisiacs?" I mumbled. My brother removed a ribbon and opened the cork using his keychain. He took whiffs of what it was and backed off from the smell. The next thing I knew, he was chugging it down. I was shocked and grabbed the bottle away from him. I thought it was too adventurous to drink some unknown liquid, even for a guy like him. "Relax, it's just whiskey." He looked at me and burst out laughing. "Aphrodisiac," he chuckled. "What? You told me to be more creative." "Aged. I'm going with 8 to 9 years, I think," he said while returning the cork and closing the box once more. "Is that still good?" "Theoretically, these things can be aged forever with the right supervision and handling." We carefully lifted each of these 3 boxes out of the shelf. As we got ready to bring it to the car, A noise from upstairs startled us both. At first, we thought some animal wandered in and was looking for shelter from the rain. But as we stood there to listen to it more carefully, it sounded more like footsteps from a human being. "Close the lights," he asserted. I was in such a state of panic that I immediately did what I was asked to do. It felt like I was 17 again, getting caught by the police for being inside a party I wasn't even willing to attend to, but forced by my friends. Noah told me to back up against the wall and wait for the footsteps to stop. The steps were slow, as if whoever it was inspecting the house, going into every room and searching. We heard the front door close. At that point, I was about to lose my mind. The police were the least of my concerns. I was praying that it was the police. I was praying that we would end up at the station for trespassing. I guess at that point, I would have even sighed in relief if it was some burglar too. My imagination was going wild. I was scared. My hands were shaking in the thought of it, the thought of him trying to find me. I keep getting angry at myself. Vic, be logical. It was all in your head. I couldn't control my breathing. I was sweating. The steps were getting louder. The old wooden floor only amplified the sound as it got near to the basement door. It was dark, but my eyes adjusted enough to make out that my brother was slowly reaching toward the pipe we found earlier. He placed his finger in between his lips and stared at me. A few steps more and we heard a loud thud. I waited for a bit longer before I turned my light back on. We went upstairs to check on who it was. Nothing. Other than the door, it seemed like nothing else was moved. We started moving the boxes to the trunk. My brother seemed to notice that I was taking such a rush into doing the task. I was still on edge at what happened. My brother seems in no condition to joke about it either. The way the car was slippery. We just needed to be careful not to fall down, or all those bottles would be a waste. Okay, we're not going to talk about those creepy footsteps we just heard, and just like that, they disappeared. It was like something was blocking my mouth, preventing me from saying anything. I guess I was just too tired to even respond, and all I could think of was just to go home, back to my family, and to rest. After getting all the boxes inside the car, Noah asked me if I got the chance to grab the note Father left us behind. I entered the house alone, sucking up my fears and trying to act my age. I went down the basement floor, mind throwing all sorts of scenarios inside my head. I rushed to the shelf we retrieved the boxes from and spotted the note. Only this time, it was flipped over. At the back, I read something that sent chills down my spine. Is it safe to go out? I froze. My head was spinning, my heart beating faster, and I was on the verge of screaming out to my brother. I rushed upstairs like a little kid and rushed outside to meet my brother. Without another word, without looking back at the house, we left. My brother tried to calm me down, even if I was quietly driving, speechless. What happened? Did you see something? You're creeping me out, man. The stoplight made the wet windshield glisten like rubies. Somehow, it was calming, even if there were no cars around the intersection. I thought it was the perfect time to stay, relax, and calm myself down. My brother let out a deep sigh and stared at me for a few seconds. I was so frustrated that it seemed to make the impression I was mad at him for making me sneak in. Noah continued to ramble along the road, making theories from the classic, "It was the wind," to maybe, "the cops went away," obviously trying to leave out the supernatural and trying to make sense of it, until he gave up and spilled out what he had been trying to tell me since we got out of the basement. I think. Do you think it was a haunting? It might have been Dad. And you know, Dad died in a stroke. Maybe that explains the loud thud. Maybe he fainted. I took a deep breath. It didn't faint. It tripped.